Damn, my doctor prescribed me only being controversial like once a week for my heart, but I decided, you know what, I'd rather just do whatever the hell I want. Terrible advice to anyone watching this. You should all listen to your doctors, except my doctor is a mental one, so it's a totally different situation. Zaheer, main antagonist in the 3rd season of Legend of Korra, is overpowered AF and done incredibly right. Legend of Korra has a pretty terrible reputation among a lot of people, and it's considered mid at best by most. Zaheer, according to the casuals, is a great villain, but according to the hardcore fans, is a terrible villain. It's ironic to see how much this guy ping-pongs between being mid or being great, or being awful.
Glad I caught you at home.
And it's in my humble opinion that he is an incredibly well-written villain, despite, well, having major flaws. Legend of Korra has 4 seasons. Each season has one main antagonist. Each main antagonist has a very basic ideology that he's trying to push onto the world. It's the kind of ideology that 14-year-olds are gonna be like, bro,
I am now
right. Oh my god, this dude, he solved everything. It's really hitting that niche 14-year-old audience right there. In my opinion, almost every good villain needs a basic ideology, or you need to be able to understand their psychology well enough to kind of know where they're coming from. Zaheer is absolutely the former and not really the latter. His psychology is not touched upon that much, but there are a few details when it comes to writing this dude, and I know, I just rewatched all of Legend of Korra to make some good shiz on it. Zaheer would not be able to defeat Goku. However, yes, I do think Zaheer is a better written character than Goku. I want to get back to the fundamentals here because before I can explain to you why he's an overpowered character done extremely right and an extremely well-written antagonist altogether, I'm first gonna have to mention the basic structure for Legend of Korra and talk about why he has his flaws and why, yeah, I get why he's disliked by a lot of people, even though I personally don't think that hinders his antagonistic capabilities. First season of Legend of Korra introduces a villain by the name of Amon. Amon is a dude, he's fighting for equality because the benders and the non-benders are not treated equally by a lot of the people. The benders are treated like better class citizens, and the non-benders are basically, you know, your average trash people. And you get to see how society has evolved to a point where you have benders taking advantage of non-benders time and time again, and it's a very legitimate issue and a very legitimate stem for a ton of corruption to happen. So him forming this equalist movement to preach some sort of equality is completely understandable. This is the vein that the Korra antagonists go down. Season 2, you have Unalaq, alright? This is this dude complaining about how the Northern Water Tribe forgot their spiritual roots and has a really bad spiritual connection to the spirit world, which again is a completely legitimate reasoning, and we understand how important it is for the human world and the spirit world to have some sort of balance, alright? That's legitimate. 3rd season, he's an anarchist. He does not like the idea of an oppressive government. You have an oppressive government, why should this queen or king be worth any more than me? And basically devolves into anarchy. He believes in complete and total anarchy, so he wants to destroy anything that can cause some sort of oppression. And the 4th season has Kuvira, who is a complete authoritarian ruler, saying that we need to unite the Earth Kingdom, we need to unite the world, and all be united in my iron fist. Now, of course, she's only able to do that because of the flaw that was Zaheer's philosophy. Zaheer's philosophy was anarchism, that there should be no real rulers, so as Zaheer even goes out there to murder the Earth Queen, in a really chillingly cool sequence, in my humble opinion, where he sucks the air out of her body. I thought that was pretty dope, whatever. However, being the anarchist that he is, he created a power vacuum that obviously, once he's toppled, some dictator will take over, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. There's a massive flaw in Zaheer's ideology, and Kuvira takes over. Let me tell you something incredibly important and prudent as to why the writing for the Korra antagonists is shitty. While each of them have a much more fundamental ideology and reasoning as to why they're doing what they're doing than, let's say, Fire Lord Ozai, literally Fire Hitler, these guys, at least they have some sort of thought-out ideology. They want the betterment of mankind. The answer is no! They make believe they want the betterment of mankind, but we don't actually get to tackle any of the issues that any of them are bringing up. Amon is right. There is a lot of racism going on. Unalaq is right. There is this dissidence between the spirit world and the human world. Zaheer is right. Kings and queens, they're freaking tyrants. They're tyrannical rulers, and they shouldn't be put on such a pedestal, stepping on the little peons. And Kuvira is right. There needs to be some sort of force to unify the Earth Kingdom because they're all getting ravaged by savages. So if all of the villains are right, how could we follow a protagonist? Well, the show has a very bad answer in my humble opinion. The show's answer to this is by delegitimizing the claims of every single one of the antagonists. They delegitimize the philosophy of Amon, dude fighting for equality, because it turns out he was a bender all along. He was just salty and hated the Avatar, and he started this whole movement not because he actually cared about equality, but because he wanted to get what he wanted. Unalaq was right that there is this dissonance between the spirit world and the human world, but the truth of the matter is, he didn't really care about that at all. He started this to create this dissonance between the human world and the spirit world, sort of, among the North, so he could invade and start a civil war, which is all super interesting, but really he just wanted to free some chaos spirits so he could become the all-powerful dark Avatar, which is the most cringe concept in the history of fiction. Zaheer actually sticks by his guns. He says he believes in anarchy, the weakest of the 4 ideological principles that were presented by the 4 main antagonists of the story. However, since it was fundamentally weak, they didn't need him to go back on his own ideology and to completely become a hypocritical oaf. Then you have Kuvira introduced. Kuvira is a character who's out there trying to fight for peace and wanted to unify the entire Earth Kingdom so that they could be strong and not be held against invaders, but she ultimately didn't really care about the Earth Kingdom being strong or being free. In fact, she just wanted to be a tyrant and a tyrannical overlord, so of course she built a giant mech, which is second place for cringiest bad guy power-up in Avatar after the Dark Avatar. I already really broke down Kuvira's character a lot in my video recently talking about the overpowered female characters in The Last Airbender versus the overpowered female characters in Korra, so if you want more on that, check that out. But you see where I'm coming from. Being that all 4 of them are presenting some sort of understandable or comprehensive ideology, there's no way for you to root for the main guy unless the villains themselves aren't believing in the crap that they're actually spouting. This fundamentally destroys the ideological backgrounds of every single one of the villains except for Zaheer. Since Zaheer's ideology is fundamentally flawed, he himself didn't need to retract his ideology to be considered a bad guy or an antagonist for the story. Amon, Unalaq, and Kuvira were all fighting for something that's legitimate, which is why if they would have actually held these ideals to the very end, they would have been the good guy in the story instead of the bad guy wearing the mask of a good guy. Zaheer had a really cursed and terrible ideology, believing in complete and total anarchism, so we could have kept him within the constraints of the ideology he believes in and not turn him into a walking hypocrite, and that's exactly what happened. This is why Zaheer really stands out against every single other antagonist in Korra, and this is why Korra goes through her whole PTSD Bender flashback episode arc after dealing with Zaheer. Yes, she was almost killed by Unalaq, alright? Freaking Dark Avatar. Yes, she was almost killed by Amon. Yes, she was almost killed by Kuvira. However, she didn't need to have that whole 3-year time skip, PTSD flashback, terrible trauma-induced situation after losing to them. She needed to have that after Zaheer because all the others, well, all of their ideologies themselves weren't something that they believed in. Zaheer is someone who actually fought for his ideals the whole time in a way that even Korra didn't. There are so many characters in this show that are flip-flopping all over the place. In fact, I think humans in general do flip-flop. You're around certain people and you start to develop that kind of ideology. You see that among Twitch streamers, all right? You have a Twitch streamer that has some sort of ideology and then they fall into some sort of group and suddenly their ideology is shifted towards that group. You have a video from Sneeko a year ago criticizing Andrew Tate, but since he was banned off a bunch of platforms and he was spouting a bunch of Andrew Tate rhetoric, all of a sudden he's literally the dude's #1 fanboy. Zaheer recognizes a completely legitimate problem in society. The fact that you have this classist government. The Earth Queen, who is a completely conniving, manipulative, I was gonna say the C word, but that gets the video auto age restricted, and he murders her. He is someone that follows his ideology through and through from the very beginning to the very end, and because he is so pure of heart, despite the fact that the ideology is an inherently flawed one, he is the one that Korra will need to go back to learn how to reconnect with the spirit world in the next season. Through force of will alone, he developed an airbending technique that allowed him to fly completely without needing the help of gliders and all that stuff, purely because of his meditative abilities and purely because he believed he was able to do it. If you look at him compared to every single other one in his little group, he has like one of those explosion benders that whenever they look at freaking blows up, you know, like Combustion Man, and he has a lava bender on his group, and yet he is the scariest one by a long shot god, despite the fact that all he has is basic airbending, and he's not even had it for that long, yet he's displayed such a mastery over it purely because of how in tuned he is with his inner self and with this spirit world. The reason why he's such an imposing figure and terrifying character throughout the entire story is not per se because he's the strongest. He's really terrifying because of his steadfast ideology and how unwavering he is to it, to a point that the spirit world, which is kind of an objective entity, it doesn't get down to the nitty-gritty of whether you're a good guy or a bad guy. It just basically focuses on if you're a pure guy and if you're really following your heart. It basically endows him with these powers, and it basically corroborates the concept that he's not fighting for some personal gain. He's legitimately fighting for an albeit terribly stupid ideology, but one that he believes in 1000%. I adore a villain that truly fights for what they believe in more than even the protagonist does, to the point that Korra is so shaken after taking a colossal L to this man that she can't even stand up for years, to the point that she needs to go back to him later to help her reattach to the spirit world, which he does, because ultimately he's not a sore loser. He doesn't care that he lost to Korra. He cares that now Kuvira seized power because of the power vacuum that he caused, because he's an anarchist and he's a really stupid fellow. I guess altogether he didn't think it was ideology, I guess. But ultimately, when he heard that there was this Kuvira character, this authoritarian ruler, that went against everything he stood by, and he was out there purely, selflessly trying to help Korra advance to the next level so that she would be able to take Kuvira down. Most villains in most TV, fiction, movies, media, books, most villains are out there for personal gain. They want to take over the world, they want to change the world, they want to be the face of the new world. They develop some sort of god complex, and they develop some sort of crazy superiority thingo going on. Even the ones that want to bring some sort of crazy peace because everyone fears them, like Pain, or someone with the twisted ideology of Madara that he wants to lock everyone into a slumber, they know that they're the villain of the world. And despite the fact that they are doing all these things, and yes, it ultimately would be for the good of society and their twisted worldview, these are characters that are taking these steps because of personal reasons. Zaheer is completely and utterly ideologically focused, and it's unwavering in every action he takes throughout the series. He does brutal things, he does cruel things, and he does terrible things, all for the sake of this ideology that he truly believes in. All because he envisions a more beautiful world in a state of absolute anarchy. So I really wanted to make this video because of the four major antagonists in Korra. I think Zaheer is by far the least physically imposing. He doesn't have a mech, he doesn't have dark avatar powers, doesn't have bloodbending. Yet his impact is so much more profound and so much more overpowered because he is someone that legitimately believes in what he's fighting for, despite it not necessarily being a very good thought process from my perspective. Ultimately, I really wanted to make this video because I feel like Zaheer gets a not good enough reputation for a villain that really fights for what he believes in, when no other character in the entire series does. Anyway, this has been a Nuxanor analysis video. Definitely check out my comparison of overpowered female characters from Avatar: The Last Airbender and how I compare them to the overpowered female characters in The Legend of Korra, because that is a banger video if I do say so myself, and it'll also greatly help the channel and the algorithm if you click from this video to that video. Also, let me know future overpowered characters you want me to make analyses on, because that's kind of been my niche as of late, and let me know general other stuff you want me to talk about. Anyway, stay weird, fam!